Howdy folks, it's your friend Fishing with Dom. Today I'm going to talk to you about my top 5 favorite baits when it comes to bass fishing. These are the baits I like to fish with. These are the baits I've caught the most fish with over the past 10 years or so. And these are the baits where if I have only these 5 baits, I could catch fish for the entire year. No joke. First things first, I'm going to start off. When the water is cold, I like to throw jerk baits. My jerk bait of choice is the Rapala Husky Jerk 12 and 14. The 12 weighs 3/8 of an ounce, the 14 weighs a half. These both dive down and suspend to a targeted depth around 6-7 foot or so. And when the ice melts off of the lake, I immediately bust these bad lads out. Make sure they're rigged up, ready to go. I cast them out there. I'll retrieve slowly and I'll let them suspend for sometimes 15 seconds. And the bass will come up. You'll feel them just pick it up. And that's why a very sensitive fluorocarbon is critical when you're jerkbait fishing late winter, early springtime. And then you just jack the fish from there. I've caught so many fish on the jerkbait. Just in the past 2 years, this skyrocketed to one of my favorite techniques for catching bass. And the beauty about the jerkbait in general, you don't only have to fish it in the cold water. You could fish it all the way through summertime. You could just cast and retrieve it in the summertime. You could just power jerk it back to the boat and catch some of the most aggressive bass of the season. The jerkbait does you no wrong whatsoever because there's so many ways to fish it. You can just, like I said, crank and retrieve it, rip it back to the boat. If you have a nasty cold front coming through and you want to have the option of letting them look at the bait for a while, just crank it down and let it sit there. It'll suspend in the water column very, very well. Doesn't have to be the Rapala Husky Jerk, but this is the jerk bait that I personally use. And I've caught a lot of fish in general with it. Bass, walleye, pike, a lot of catfish in the wintertime too. This is an excellent cold water bait in general. So fall is coming. If you want to do some fall smallmouth bass fishing or largemouth fishing or even walleye fishing around rocks, hey, the suspending Husky Jerk, especially at night, fantastic bait to catch bass and fish in general. Now, how am I going to do this? Next one up. I'm just going to do them from my left to right. In general, you probably know this about me, but I'm a real big lipless crankbait advocate. I don't feel like people fish with them like I feel like people don't fish with them like they should be. I don't feel like they're used to their full potential. I've got the Berkley War Pig, the Rapala Rip and Wrap. I like this bait quite a bit. The Booyah Hard Knocker, and also the classic Rapala Rattlin' Wrap. And I've been fishing with lipless crankbaits for probably 10 years or so. And there's so many of them on the market, but only a handful of them actually catch fish. And if they don't catch fish for me, or if they don't get solid reviews, I won't buy it. But these 4 lipless cranks I just showed you, fantastic. I've been fishing with Rattlin' Rapala probably 10, 11 years now. It was very cheap, and when I was younger and still in school, I was able to buy several of these. They were probably about $4 a piece back then. And you cast them a country mile, and there's no wrong way to fish with a lipless crankbait. I found that out immediately. I was just bringing it back. One day I had off school, and I was having big bass just absolutely clobber it in the springtime. And in the summertime, I would take it out to the deeper part of the lake on my boat, and I'd come across grass lines and over drop-offs, and it always caught fish for me. And then once it got really cold outside, I was able to jig it and let it pause and kind of yo-yo it back to the boat. And I vertically fished it, I've slow fished it over deep water, and I've caught a lot of fish with it. Bass, smallmouth, largemouth, especially smallmouth on the Great Lakes. A lipless crankbait is an awesome way to cover a lot of water very, very effectively. And depending on how the fish are feeling, based on the weather, the pressure, whatever the conditions may be, I could let it hit the bottom and I could yo-yo it back to the boat. I could flutter it and let it fall. I've caught smallmouth and largemouth bass any way possible on a lipless crankbait. This Berkley War Pig got some nice rattles to it. It's got a very, very tall, shad-like profile to it. This Booyah Hard Knocker, absolutely love it. Got a good rattle to it. It looks really similar to the Strike King Red Eye Shad. That's another great lipless crankbait, by the way. If you're fishing with any of these, you'll catch fish. But I really also like this Rippin' Rap by Rapala. It's got a lot of flash to it. Got a hard rattle. You can cast these bad lads a country mile. This is the smaller half-ounce size. They make the ultralight series for ice fishing also. And then they make the giant King Kong Rippin' Rap. That's 7/8 of an ounce. It's a bad lad. You cast them out, pump them back to the boat. I've caught a lot of fish in general. Cold water, summertime, even if there's still ice out on the lake, I've caught a lot of fish with lipless crankbaits in general. There's no wrong way to fish with them. In my opinion, they are the best fishing lure ever made. You can't beat a lipless crankbait in my opinion. I can fish with it year round and catch fish. That's a lot to ask for in a bait. So that is why lipless cranks are on my list. And this list is in no particular order. If you're on the list, you're on the list. It's like a cool kid at a frat party. You know, I'm on the list. Now, next, I'm looking at the remaining baits in front of me. We're going to take it to the top. Literally. I feel the same way about buzzbaits how I feel about lipless crankbaits. I feel like people don't fish with them like they used to. The amount of bass I've caught throwing buzzbaits from mid to early June up until mid-September, October is just astronomical. If I'm throwing a topwater bait, I promise you this. Probably 90% of the time it's a buzzbait. Largemouth, smallmouth, buzzbait gets the job done. It allows me to cover a lot of water. And when I'm tired in the morning sometimes and I'm fishing, I've been fishing for a couple of days and I'm just going through this funk and I'm a little sleepy, the buzzbait has a rhythm to it. When it's churning across the water, you're hearing the splash and the tink of the blade up against the prop right here. This is the clacker buzz, so it makes a little bit of extra noise and vibration. So you don't necessarily have to look at this bait while you're fishing it. I've caught probably most of my fish over the years just listening to it, just looking in a totally different direction. And it's churning across the surface. I can hear the rhythm of the clacker and the blade cutting across the water. And just bass would come up, absolutely hammer it, and by the time I realized, oh, I just got a hit, I was already setting the hook. It seems like whenever I'm not paying attention to it, that's when the big bass just absolutely crush it when I'm least expecting it. I really, really dig buzzbait fishing, but I don't feel like people utilize buzzbaits like they used to. This is the Booyah Clacker Buzz. I fish these in sizes from 1/4 ounce to 1/2 ounce. Most of the time I'm fishing the middle ground, the 3/8 ounce. And I'm not burning it too fast, but I'm allowing that propeller just to chop the surface of the water. Not too fast, not too slow. It's a nice, easy rhythm. I'm fishing it on a bait casting setup, 6.4 to 1 gear ratio. Nothing too fast, just brisk. Just bringing it back, and when they pick up on it, give it a split second, and just send it home. I've caught a lot of nice fish on the buzzbait over the years. That's why it belongs on the list of my top 5 baits. Plain and simple. Sometimes I'll take the skirts off and put a little swim bait on the shank of the hook. Sometimes I'll put a twister tail. Sometimes I'll play around with it and throw a crawdad even on the hook. And it catches fish day in and day out. You can't go wrong with a buzzbait. You most definitely can't. Now, 4th on the list. Now, you know me. It seems like I'm very, very brand specific, but I'll tell you, these are just categories of baits with some references. You don't have to fish these exact baits that I fish. But number 4 on my list, crawfish baits. Scented crawfish baits. Absolutely kill bass. It's unbelievable. In a lot of situations, this is a bass's number 1 source for food. If there isn't a lot of bait fish around, a lot of stuff they can eat, they're feeding on bugs a lot of the times. You can't see minnows, but you're catching smallmouth bass or largemouth bass. You know, what they're looking for to feed, they're hiding under rocks, just crawfish, just like these ones. Now, the crawfish is very versatile. You can fish it in the springtime. You could fish it in the winter time. I mean, like southern winter, not Michigan winter when it's iced up. Fish it on the jig. You can fish it really slow on the jig. You can fish it on a Texas rig, on a Carolina rig. Play with it. The crawdad is so versatile. It's unbelievable. Now, what I'm just trying to see exactly what color this is. This is just the Berkley Powerbait Chigger Craw, traditional green pumpkin color. And then this is the Sapphire Blue. I've caught a lot of fish on both of these, but in general, you can't beat the green pumpkin. It's a law. You just can't beat the green pumpkin. I've caught a lot of fish with it Texas rigged over the years, on the jig. Man, weedless even, very, very finesse. I'll use just a worm hook going through it, no weight, and I'll just cast it out there and let it slowly sink down. That's only if I believe the fish are very, very pressured. But other than that, yeah, there's no wrong way to fish a crawdad. I've caught so many bass with it over the years. It's insane. When a lot of the guys on my lake growing up were playing around with new things, when wacky rigging became very, very big, I wasn't doing it quite yet because I was still throwing the jig. I was still throwing the crawdad in general, and I was catching just as many fish as they were, but I was doing it differently. We're all bass fishermen. We're all different people. I think it's pretty fascinating, but a lot of people gave me crap about fishing the crawdad 10 years ago, but it caught me a lot of fish. Nothing wrong with the ways they were fishing, but I was catching a lot of big bass on the crawdad. That's why it's number 4 on my list. Can't necessarily fish it long. You can fish in the thickest vegetation. You could fish it deep. You could throw it in, a foot of water and still catch very, very big bass because, they're eating crawdads a lot of the time. And this is a crawdad they go crazy for. I promise you that. The Berkley Powerbait Chigger Craw, the Powerbait Max Scent line, the Meaty Chunk, and the Creature Hog. The Berkley Havoc Pit Boss and Crawfatty. Those are great baits also. Net bait, Pack a Craw, that's a good one. The Strike King Rage Tail. Those are all really, really good crawdads you can use. But as of now, we have jerk baits, lipless crankbaits, buzz baits, and the crawdad. Last of all, I'm going to share with you on my top 5 favorite bass fishing baits. Plain and simple. The stick bait. The stick bait, the Senko worm, cigar bait, whatever you want to call it. This bait means a lot to me because when I finally said, you know what, I'm going to try wacky rigging, it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life because it caught me a lot more fish. When they weren't hugging the bottom and they weren't in thick cover and I had to approach smallmouth on shallow rocky flats with a very finesse approach, the wacky rig always got it done for me. Now, you can fish a stick bait like this on a Carolina rig, on a Texas rig, or drop shot, whatever you want to. But most of the time, I'm wacky rigging this. I'll be very, very honest. The Gulp 5-inch sinking minnow, the Yum Dinger, the Strike King shimmy stick, the Bass Pro Shop Sticko bait, the Max Scent General. I fish with all of them because they all work. The Yamamoto Senko, those work too, but they're a little bit more expensive. So I fish with the Max Scent a lot lately because it's a very dense worm. It sinks very fast. But wacky rigging in general. I've caught fish in the springtime, and I've caught fish, up until ice up in December with it. I can fish it very, very slow. I could fish a wacky rig so slow. When I cast it out there, I could let it sit on the bottom sometimes, and the bass will come through, pick it up, and you'll see your line jump, and they just reel down and set the hook. You can fish it deep, fish it shallow. You can spot fish it. I do that quite a bit on rivers. I'll see a piece of structure or a little target fish could be hanging out around, and I'll just toss the worm behind the rock and dance it a little bit, flip it back out, and try under whatever next target I see, whether it be a tree, whether it be a large rock, a bridge pylon, whatever it may be. I've caught fish everywhere wacky rigging. If they don't want the wacky rig, they might not want a whole lot of anything else. It'll tell you something. If they don't want this, it's gonna be a tough day on the water. Plain and simple. They love seeing the free falling action of this style of bait, and they just go for it. whatever the bait will do, it'll just kind of shimmy through the water, or the tail ends of it will twitch, and it'll just settle down. Travis Bass nuts. Catches a lot of fish. All of these catch fish, whether it be the stick bait, the crawdad, the buzz bait, the lipless crankbait, or the jerk bait. If you have these 5 baits in your tackle box for one whole year, I guarantee you'll catch fish the entire year. These are my top 5 for a reason. They've done good for me over the past 10 years, and they do good for me throughout the entire year. I'll fish with one of these baits so much during a certain time of the year, I have to force myself to step back a little bit and try to fish with something different. Like, I don't want to be the guy who only fishes this way. I got to force myself to break out of this habit, but it's hard to, knowing that I catch fish with these baits, and I've got, hundreds and hundreds of different baits and colors and whatnot, but 5 that I always go back to, right in front of me right now. Fantastic baits. If you have any questions about this, I know you probably do. I just threw a whole lot of information your way. Let me know. If you have any comments, hit me up. If you have any suggestions, drop them below, because this was a very important video to me that I put together. This is everything I've learned in bass fishing over the past 10 years, summarized in just a few short minutes here. If I were to fish on a tournament trail or Bassmaster circuit somewhere, and I had these 5 baits, I'd weigh fish. I promise you that. I would definitely weigh fish. But let me know what you think of my list. Is there anything I missed? Is there an honorable mention? Or is there something I need to fish that I don't fish with? There are quite a few techniques in bass fishing that I don't fish that much, that I really want to. I just don't have the opportunity to sometimes. But thank you for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. I'm Dom. Take care. Bye-bye.